Okay, so now we're ready. So everybody, I hope you had a good lunch. And from now on, now let's start the next session. The session title is Asia's Leading City for Technology Installment. Is the key of establishing a halal hub collaboration between MNCs and startups in Malaysia. So in this session, we welcome Aerodyne Japan as our session partner and 3 panelist members from Malaysia. Do you know that Malaysia is well known for having its tech installment city? We bring Itoh-san from Aerodyne Japan to deepen the conversation of establishing a halal hub. With this, I would like to pass the mic to Itoh-san, our moderator for this session. So the floor is yours.
Thank you for your introduction. So let me just introduce myself first. 今ちょっと日本のオーディエンスのために日本語でバーッと話してしまいますけれども、Let me just speak Japanese real quick as my introduction. 今ですね、私、今日マレーシアのことについてお話しするんですけれども、エアロダインの具体的な説明はこの後グループ代表のカマルルがおりますので、そちらでお聞きしていただければと思うんですが、私のキャリアをですね、伊藤明一体誰なんだということで簡単にご案内しますと、もともとはテレビの制作会社 AD ということをやっておりまして、日本だったりシンガポール、アメリカに移住経験があるんですけれども、ドローン業界ではもうこの3年でかなりですね、この顔とこのヒゲのフェイスで、かなり定着をしておりまして、ドローンの記者さんにはドローン業界のおしゃべりバズーカとニックネームをつけていただいて、日々ですね、エヴァンジェリストワークですね、としてどういうふうにしたらドローンを活用できるのかというお話をしております。次のページをお願いいたします。実際エヴァンジェリストですね、ちゃんと仕事はやっております。岸田政調会長、元政調会長ですね、だったりだとか、現平井デジタル大臣に対して、どういうことをやったらドローンは活用できるのかっていうようなことをですね、政策の提言をさせていただいております。次のページをお願いいたします。エアロダインですが、ドローンを使って、インフラアセットの点検ですとか測量なんかをやっているんですけれども、詳しいお話は、カマルーの方からさせていただきますが、日本においてはですね、公共事業費、今これ日本で6兆円の予算がついているんですけれども、実はですね、これが2033年、今から12年後ですかね、には6兆分の 5.5 兆円というのが点検と補修だけで使われるという未来が試算できております。こうなってしまうと、我々の子供の世代やその先の世代に対して、新しいインフラを残すことができないという状況になってしまいます。日本というのは、インフラ大国、美しい国だ、なんていうふうに諸外国から見られているんですけれども、今実は、この公共事業費かなり予算が逼迫している状況です。これをドローンを使うことで、より効率的な点検ができないかというところを、エアロダインジャパンとしては模索をしております。では続いてですね、パネラーの皆様から、自己紹介をお願いいたします。Now the Kamarul, as the president of the Aerodyne group, will introduce like what Aerodyne does and a bit about himself. Kamarul, can you just talk about your part, please?
Sure. This is my whole deck, yeah? Or is it just an introduction? Right. What we do at Aerodyne is that our vision is to advance humanity through drone intelligence. I will not talk very long because I've already explained about this part in the earlier session. Primarily, I want to talk about what we have in Cyberjaya and how we can help all of you potential Japanese partner to work with us in our region as well. Just a quick snapshot. Our HQ is in Cyberjaya, so we will talk a little bit more about that. But primarily, I want to talk about how we are actually in 32 other countries through 11 regional HQs that we have around the world, and through our local partners and collaborators as well. And we are also in a total of 84 countries through our technical partners around the world. And again, today, Leave a Nest is also one of our investors as well, the organizer of this event today. So this is a snapshot. A lot of the thing that we do, Akira mentioned earlier, is actually in critical assets, but there's a lot more that we do as well. Primarily, what we do is about solving deep issues with deep technology. So some of the thing that we do right now is actually solving food security issue, unemployment issue in Malaysia. We are solving infrastructure management as well globally. Right. So let's go back to Malaysia. I just wanted to highlight a little bit about the recent my digital blueprint that has just been released by our Prime Minister about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and how this actually will benefit the country and also potential investors that can come to the country. This initiative, on top of already about 320 billion ringgit of economic stimulus for COVID-19, in my personal opinion as an industry player, will go a long way towards strengthening the economy in Malaysia. Some of the things that we are looking at is actually creations of more than 500,000 jobs and so on and so forth. So I think my colleague from the regulators will probably be speaking a little bit more about this as well. We at Aerodyne alone, we are also looking at committing about $13 million towards supporting the government in the My Digital initiative for boosting the economy, building the digital infrastructure, and so on and so forth. At Aerodyne alone, we are looking at creating about 3,000 jobs within the next 2 years. So back to Cyberjaya. This is our campus where we are serving our operations in 32 countries. This is a very nice facility right smack in the middle of Cyberjaya. We have about 50,000 square feet of facilities here in the 16-acre land. And we are already collaborating with various Japanese partners as well. And I will talk a little bit about that as well. So why do we choose Cyberjaya? It's a big technology hub. There's about 50 multinational companies in Cyberjaya, about 400 startup. Is very close in terms of logistics, very close to the airport, close to the administrative capital of Malaysia. The infrastructure is world class. And then this is actually the reason why we moved to Cyberjaya. We've only been here for about 1 year. We are a 6-year-old company. The last 5 years, we were somewhere else in Kuala Lumpur. So we really moved here because of the facilities that is available in Cyberjaya. Our building itself is also an MSE status company. I would also like to bring your attention to number 9, which is Drone and Autonomous Vehicle Testing Zone. And this is something that attracts us so much to this. We are already working with with a Japanese company called ACSL, where we are doing drone testing in Malaysia right now in this region. And we have a drone testing zone that allows us to do this 365 days a year, rather than having this limitation of weather and so on and so forth. I already mentioned about this. We have a training facilities here as well. And last month alone, we trained almost 100 new drone pilots at our facility. And more are coming as well, especially coming out of the economic stimulus that we have happening in Malaysia right now. This is a brief view of our facilities. You can see our drone MRO as well. We have 10,000 square feet of drone MRO and training facilities around the office as well. Okay. All right. One of the big potential for Cyberjaya is actually to do the testing for last mile drone delivery. As you all know, drone delivery is one of the fastest growing vertical. We are already testing this. We have already signed up for a collaboration with DHL Express. We are working with ACSL in Japan as well. And there's a lot more opportunity that we can pursue from this angle. And I think one of the big one that we can and should be looking at is actually urban air mobility. We are in talks with some Japanese company as well in the past about the potential of doing urban air mobility testing in Cyberjaya. We are located right in the area of smart mobility, where we can get permission to do this POC and testing year around without weather constraint. So again, in general, Cyberjaya, since we moved here, it allowed us to double our growth since our operation in PJ before this, and the infrastructure that we have enable us to manage our global operation right smack in this global campus that we have here in Cyberjaya. So this is a big, high-level overview about why we moved to Cyberjaya and how we can actually work with various organizations, corporations, or drone companies in Japan to help you advance your operation as well. So that's an overview from Aerodyne. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamarul. The next, Mr. Zulfiqar, can you just explain what you're doing in the Iskandar investment?
I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so thank you. So I think leading on to what Kamarul-san introduced earlier, we are from Iskandar Investment, and we'd like to give an introduction to the Iskandar Innovation Hub, an initiative that we're doing in the south part of Malaysia. Next, please. So in what we're doing, basically, we are a government-linked company. So we are a commercial entity, but we are owned by the government, and we started about almost 16 years ago, this project called Iskandar Malaysia in 2006, where it's a long-term plan trying to bridge the economic gap and trying to transform the location, which is Iskandar Malaysia, into something that's more sustainable for the future generation. Next, please. So for those who are not aware, as I mentioned, we are in the south part of Malaysia. The small island there is Singapore. And within our region, we have 5 notable zones where we are in Zone B, which is Iskandar Puteri, near the second link between Malaysia and Singapore. So we're very close. The proximity to the border is about less than a 10-minute drive to the border of Singapore and about 45 minutes to downtown Singapore in Orchard Road. Next. So introduction, what do we mean by a government-linked company? Basically, we are owned by the government of Malaysia through various entities. Our major shareholder here is Iskandar Investment. Iskandar Investment is a company owned by Khazanah Nasional, the sovereign investment arm of the government of Malaysia. We are also owned by the Employees Provident Fund, which is a trust fund that employees and employers contribute and part of the income, and also KPRJ, which is the Johor State Government Investment Arm. So through Iskandar Investment over the last 16 years, we've done a lot of developments, especially in the area of understanding what is required from the very beginning of the project, which is the catalytic and also the infrastructure-based developments. We've also added a lot of the components that are there, like the lifestyle. We developed Legoland Malaysia. We brought in the hospitals. We brought in Iskandar Malaysia Studios and other things. So now we are at a part where in this third phase of the development, we are trying to fill in that infrastructure and lifestyle components with job creation, and also trying to add in the sustainable area, which is bringing in emerging technologies into the picture. Next, please. So, as I mentioned earlier, we are here to introduce the Iskandar Innovation Hub. This is an interesting project that we started about 3 years ago. About 5 years ago. So this is something that we have looked at, how to bring together all the necessary things that are there so that we can actually bring Iskandar Malaysia to be the forefront of innovation and emerging technology type of activities. So when understanding the role of a government-linked company, we do not do the job of the government where we complement the regulators and the policies that the government puts up, and we try to get the industry to drive whatever is necessary. So we are here as a bridge, a kakehashi, if you like, in terms of the companies and the government. Next, please. So the evolution of our Iskandar Innovation Hub, when we first started this initiative, we targeted basically trying to transform the landscape of the Johor economic makeup, which was pretty much manufacturing, agriculture, tourism, and oil and gas. So the knowledge base or services-based activities were very minimal in the state of Johor, in the region of Iskandar Malaysia. So we started by bringing in projects that were shared services and outsourcing. This is the IT and business process outsourcing side through Global Business Services. And over time, we realized that the next phase that we need to bring is looking at the emerging technologies. So we started introducing projects like blockchain. We are talking about games development. And more recently, we have introduced the drones and robotic zone. And moving forward, we are trying to identify what are the other kinds of future emerging technologies that may be developed in the region so that it can actually serve this purpose. Next, please. So when we talk about doing the Iskandar Innovation Hub, it is pretty much similar to some of the initiatives that if you look at, I think in the closest one there that the hosts are, like the Haneda Innovation City over there, where we look at what are those components? What are the components that would be required that we can actually work with the government and industry to develop so that this can actually be a regional center of innovation for the new economy. So we are working on space infrastructure, which is looking at how we can actually develop co-working spaces, office suites, and so on. We are trying to identify industry cluster programs. This is focusing on what are the industry requirements. These may be policy discussions, identifying work streams that may be required for these specific technologies. Talent remains to be a very important topic. So human capital development, trying to develop the talent is a very high agenda that we have. We try to also find the right match between industry and government through our synergy programs. And of course, when we are trying to develop a physical location, the requirements of the talent, the community, the attraction of the people, the retention of the talent that we want, we have to identify what are those lifestyle requirements, and we go back and see what kind of solutions may be required. Next, please. So a quick introduction and update. As I mentioned earlier, the first project that we did back in 2013 was GBS Iskandar. GBS stands for Global Business Services. So we started by attracting many companies from the United States, from Malaysia, from Singapore, from Hong Kong to do IT outsourcing, business process outsourcing. And then we moved into attracting companies in the emerging technology landscape, like we have OK Blockchain from Japan. We brought in a games company like Deluxe Games, also from Japan. And eventually we have companies that are doing IoT, 3D printing, and more blockchain type of companies. And more recently, we have also companies who are doing property technology, mechatronic development, and DHL is our latest one doing their Global Forwarding Express Nerve Center here in Iskandar, Malaysia. So that has yielded good results to show that Johor or Iskandar, Malaysia has the capacity to change itself from a manufacturing, agriculture-based economy into one that is knowledge-based. Next, please. So then back in 2019, we thought that we would pivot into emerging technologies. So we launched a project called Blockchain Village at Medini. Similarly, we look at what are the components to be able to develop Iskandar Puteri as a regional hub for blockchain industry in Iskandar, Malaysia. So we worked with various agencies. Today, I think we have about 56 or 57 agencies and stakeholders who are partners in this collaboration, focusing similarly on talent, infrastructure, the promotion of the industry, and the policy development that may be required. Next. Okay, so this is the most recent project that we launched. DRZ Iskandar was launched back at the end of 2020, where we're trying to see now one of the new areas that we can complement in terms of emerging technologies is through the development of a drone and robotics ecosystem. There are 6 components that are there that you can see. We are developing a drone test site, the workspace requirements, incubation, talent, events, and policy. So we are very active in talking to people, trying to understand what are their requirements and how they can drive what are the requirements for the drones and robotic zone in Iskandar, Malaysia. I'll explain a little bit more on that. Next. Did I lose this screen? Okay. Next, please. Okay, so we later, I think in the detailed discussion, we can go about what we're doing, but these are the things that we are highlighting for 2021. Some of those plans are disrupted because of the COVID-19, but we hope that soon either through online seminars like this, or if we can physically participate in some of those events like the Japan drone event planned in June. We want to welcome participation from our Japanese audience to see how we can collaborate further on trying to understand how we can support your entry into Malaysia, or how Malaysia can play a role in the development of Japanese corporations in this area. I think that's it for my introduction, right? Thank you very much. Later we'll have a good discussion.
Thank you,
Over back to
Zul-san.
And Itoh-san, I'm so sorry to inform, but that there's a technical problem right now. The slide wasn't able to show up on the online sessions. But shall we move on to the next presentation? And from now on, if we can do the slide sharing, hopefully we can be able to show up the slides from now on.
Okay, let's move on to Riduan-san from the Malaysian Investment Development Authority.
Minasama konnichiwa. Firstly, allow me to introduce the organization that I'm representing, the Malaysian Investment Development Authority, or MIDA. Next slide, please. MIDA is the principal government agency responsible in the promotion and coordination of investment, both foreign direct investment and domestic direct investment in Malaysia. We are an agency under the Ministry of International Trade and Industry, which is equivalent to METI here in Japan. So we have presence in all over the world in 20 offices. We have 2 offices in Japan, in Osaka, in Tokyo, and I'm based in Tokyo. So we do support investments into the country. We provide promotion. This is what part of the promotion exercise that we are doing to inform Japanese companies about the opportunities in Malaysia. Besides that, as an investment promotion agency, we also evaluate application for licenses, tax incentives, expatriate posts, and so on. And our service does not stop there. We also have the support and offer support and facilitation to ensure that your projects in Malaysia can be implemented smoothly. Next slide. This is a snapshot about the investments in Malaysia as at the end of last year, 2020. In terms of projects implemented in Malaysia, Japan is ranked #1 as the source of FDI into the country. Currently, based on our record, there are more than 2,700 manufacturing projects with total accumulated investment as at December to 2020 of 27.7 billion US dollars, followed by US and so on. For Japan, investment from Japan mostly focused in the E&E sector, chemical and chemical products, non-metallic mineral products, and so on. So in Malaysia, you can find a lot of Japanese companies, both MNCs like Panasonic, Sony, Daikin, you name it, as well as the Sugo-soshas, the major Sugo-soshas, as well as SMEs, yeah? And the type of business they are involved, it has evolved over the years from purely focused on manufacturing, and now they have ventured into the services sector, the healthcare services, retail, and so on. Next slide. Next slide. In terms of focus, currently as part of the government missionary, we are currently focusing on high-tech, high-value-added type of activities in Malaysia. These are the type of investments we want to attract more into the country. In terms of manufacturing, for example, we are focusing on advanced electronics, medical devices, aerospace. In the services sector, maybe a lot of Japanese companies involved in the logistics sector, R&D, green technology, for example. And in the tech sector, this is which is in line with our recent, what do you call that, digital blueprint that was mentioned by Kamarul earlier. We are also focusing on the cloud services, IoT, big data analysis, e-commerce, digital content, as what Zulfiqar mentioned earlier as well. Next slide. This is a snapshot, a quick facts on the opportunities that Malaysia can offer to Japanese companies. From the digital penetration perspective, the Malaysian population are highly, equipped with the access to internet. For example, when you look at the total number of smartphone users in Malaysia, there are 20.9 million of Malaysians having smartphones. Our current population is at just over 32 million. Total number of Facebook users, we have over 22 million, internet penetration of 86%. I think for any companies that are looking at investing in any part of ASEAN or Malaysia, they shouldn't just look at Malaysia as a sole market. ASEAN as a region offer a lot of opportunities, especially by making Malaysia as a hub. By residing in Malaysia, you will have access to over 640 million population in 10 ASEAN countries. Next slide. Okay, this is some statistics comparing ASEAN countries. If you look at Malaysia, as highlighted in the red box, we have a population of 32 million, and our GDP per capita is at 11.2 thousand US dollars. So we are just below, in terms of GDP per capita, we are just below Singapore. So from our perspective, this offers a lot of opportunities for companies to make Malaysia as a test bed for the ASEAN population. From the startup perspective, Startup Genome has ranked Malaysia 11th in the emerging ecosystem ranking, top 10 emerging ecosystem in performance, and top 20 emerging ecosystem in talent. In terms of other ranking that I wish to highlight from this slide is the recent study done by KPMG that ranked Malaysia as 4th among 17 economies that offer a very cost competitive in terms of for doing business. We fare even better than China, Japan, Vietnam, and India. Next slide. So basically, that's the end of my introduction. In this slide, this is where we are located, in Shiroyama Trust Tower. Our office has been in Japan, in Tokyo, for the last more than 45 years, even older than I am. So you are most welcome to reach out to us to discuss how we can support your expansion into Malaysia. Thank you, Itoh.
Thank you, Riduan-san, and thank you, everyone. Let me just speak Japanese real quick. So 今、3人からご案内いただいて、例えばマレーシアのマイデジタルだったり、サイバージャヤ、イスカンダル、例えばブロックチェーンビレッジ、いろんなキーワードが出てきたと思うんですけれども、マレーシアものすごい今勢いにあふれてます。で、私もマレーシアのグループカンパニーで働いている中で、やはりすごい面白いなと思うところはですね、やはり国が成長していると、そこにいる国民ですね、みんな明るいんですよね。明日は絶対今日より良くなっている、その自信があるからこそ、やはりみんなですね、勢いに乗れるというのがあるかなと思うんですけれども、先ほどマイダの方が44年も日本にいるっていうふうなことをおっしゃってたんですけども、ちょっと日本とマレーの関係性、もう少し深く聞いてみようかなと思うんですけれども、So let me ask a question to Riduan-san. So you said MIDA has been in Japan more than 44 years now. Could you tell me a little bit about the background, like the relationship with Japan and Malaysia? I think it started sort of a look east policy kind of thing.
Yeah. Thank you, Ridzuan, for that question. I think in terms of government-to-government relationship, the first diplomatic ties was established more than 60 years ago, yeah, from the government-to-government perspective. And then this was further strengthened when our former Prime Minister introduced the Look East policy. So that is a very bold move at that point of time, where everyone was looking at the to the US or the European. But our Prime Minister have the vision that vision of looking towards Japan to encourage the country to develop from being a very agriculture, from being a poor country to develop into an industrial sector. And as I mentioned in my slide earlier, This has resulted in a lot of companies, Japanese companies, investing in Malaysia, being number one source of FDI into the country that offers more than 300,000 employment opportunities for Malaysia, and also they have evolved into doing more high value-added activities, doing R&D, and contribute not just to the manufacturing but also to the technology development in the country.
Thank you very much. I have a question to Zul-san. I think Iskandar is locating right in front of Singapore. And most of the Japanese mega enterprise, they are already in Singapore and having the R&D sectors in Singapore. And what Iskandar can offer to the Japanese people rather than just a capability of Singapore? Like, what's the comparison between Iskandar and Singapore?
Thank you. I think the very basis that Iskandar Malaysia is very, very close to Singapore. As I mentioned earlier, it's only a 10-minute drive to the second link and about a 45-minute drive to downtown, and also maybe if you drive a little bit more, about an hour, you get to Changi Airport. So that is the unique selling point for Iskandar Malaysia. For the proximity to Singapore is something that only we can offer as a location that differentiates us from other developments in Malaysia. So if you look at that, for Japanese companies, when we talk about bringing the value proposition of Iskandar Malaysia, not just in terms of what are the kind of developments that we are doing, but what advantage does that bring? For example, when we look at emerging technology companies, especially for large corporations that began developing startups and their initiatives. So we do understand that, Singapore remains to be one of the key nerve centers for startups within the region. So they have a very mature, a very developed location, which Malaysia in Kuala Lumpur also has. But the most mature, I think, in the ASEAN region remains to be Singapore. When you talk about the startups, the incubators, the funding, the institutions of higher learning, and so on. So they are very good at that, and a lot of companies, startups go there to start, maybe from to get advantage of that. So they grow from 5 to maybe 20, 30 people in a very quick amount of time because they have the support system. But then they run into a problem whenever they have the next phase that they're looking at, which is growth. How from 30 to 300 or 400 software engineers, software developers, programmers, that is going to be a challenge if you're doing it in locations like Singapore. So looking for a location that not only allows for lower cost, but also allows for the proximity where they can have daily interaction, where the management of the companies can travel daily, or they can have their operations at their development centers in Iskandar Malaysia, is a very attractive value proposition. The other angle that the companies look at is because we have space. So for example, when we talk to our counterparts in Singapore with regards to what kind of limitations are there when drone companies, for example, are looking to do their test sites, where they're looking for locations that can do more of those requirements in something that has a more complete location. So if you look at it in Singapore, because if you need to go further out by another 10 kilometers, basically you have to do your testing into the sea. But if you're looking for a location that has multiple geographical requirements, or also the development of the POCs within those locations, this is something that we can work at. And because we are fairly new, being a location that's being developed for the last 15 years, there's a mixture between a greenfield, brownfield, and a mature development that we can take advantage to develop the POCs for the companies that want to do their testing and the development of their solutions in Iskandar Malaysia.
Very interesting. I think that Malaysia is one of the best POC test field among the ASEAN country. So the Kamarul mentioned there is the drone autonomous vehicle testing zone in Cyberjaya. Kamarul, can you just tell us a little bit about that test field and also what exactly the Aerodyne does in the field? Like what kind of privilege we have? Kamarul, your audio is off, I think.
Sure. Thank you for the question. We are located in the smart mobility area where we have a standing approval to do autonomous, it's an autonomous testing zone. So we are already seeing autonomous cars being tested, and we will be able to fly our drones as well in this designated area. So one of the things that we are working on right now, for example, I mentioned earlier, is we are working with ACSL from Japan to do drone delivery. So we are testing the first 1,000 hours of the drone flying to do that. We are also developing a smart nested drone for national security. And we are testing this not just in our region, but we are controlling this globally. These systems is actually in Middle East, in the UK as well, and ability for us to put this nested system in our facility really facilitate the testing and then being able to bring this new next generation technology to the market much faster as well. And I'm very happy to be here in where we are right now in Cyberjaya. We are getting regulatory support. We have a designated area. The Malaysian Civil Aviation Authority are also now very receptive to innovation and technology. They just received new directives in terms of drones. So all in all, I think we are situated at the best geographical locations now to do various type of drone and robotics POC, including air mobility and even autonomous vehicle.
Thank you, Kamarul. Aerodyne is selected as a number 2 of the drone service provider right now, but it's still startup, right? So does that mean Malaysian government listen to what Aerodyne says, like what Aerodyne needs to support, what kind of support you need? Like, for example, in Japan, we have a similar concept area, sort of like, for example, Fukushima robot test field, like we can fly drone freely over there, but I think the size is very different. But without the knowing needs in the government, there's no actions, I think. So is there any system the government listen to startup? Like, what do you think? Can I just, Kamarul, could you answer from the startup point?
Right. I have seen tremendous positive development compared to when we started 6 years ago, right? I mean, Aerodyne is a 6-year-old company. But I would say that through our fast growth, drone industry began to get the attention of the government. And since 2.5 years or 3 years ago, a lot of effort is being put by various agencies in Malaysia to support the industry. So I would say that the drone ecosystem now is getting the attention of the authorities, and as a result, we are getting, including what's happening in Iskandar now under Zulfiqar, right? So when we started with 3 people, and up to 3 years ago we were 200 plus people. Now various incentives, various initiatives that has allowed us to grow even faster. So it's very easy for us to get talents, and we have universities surrounding our facilities as well. We are collaborating with almost every universities, and there's no shortage of government ministries wanting to look at this next generation technology as well. I would say today we are working with at least 5 or 6 ministries already, developing new solutions, testing new technology as well. So it is a very thriving and supportive industry right now. So the attention in Malaysia is amazing, especially now that drone industry is also gaining recognition globally. And why not? It's a fast-growing vertical. It's a CAGR of about 50%. And the industry is going to be worth about 30 billion in just a couple of years from now. So it's a very exciting ecosystem that we have in Malaysia right now.
Riduan, can you add any comments from the government perspective?
Yeah, I think the Malaysian government has adopted from day one, I think, a very pro-business policies. Yeah, we are a business-friendly government. And in terms of policies, incentives that are offered by the government, we are also very flexible and very dynamic, and it keeps changing to suit the need of the business people. For example, in June of last year, the Malaysian government has announced several incentive packages, tax incentive packages to stimulate the economy, to mitigate the impact of the pandemic. And again, at the end of last year, in November 2020, the Minister of Finance has introduced new measures, new policies to encourage and attract more investment, both foreign direct investments as well as domestic direct investments. The thing that I wish to echo, as Kamarul and Zulfiqar mentioned earlier, in terms of talent development, I just wish to inform the audience that currently there are nearly 2,900 Malaysian students studying in various universities in Malaysia. And from the start of the Look East policy in 1980 until today, I think until last year, there are about 18,000 graduates. So these offers Japanese companies to access to Malaysian talents with a certain level of Japanese culture and ethics in them. This will give advantage for Japanese companies to ensure that their operations in Malaysia run smoothly.
Thank you, Riduan. I have a question to Zul-san. So there's the big ecosystem in both Cyberjaya and Iskandar. What's the difference? I believe there's a competition even in Malaysia, right? Can you just tell us, like, what's the difference? Or I think it's a healthy competition. Could you just tell us a little bit about the background, like how the Cyberjaya grows, how the Iskandar grows? I mean, for most of the audience here in today, Japanese people who want to enter the Malaysian country. So I think they're highly interested in, like, what's the difference between the Cyberjaya and the Iskandar?
I think very briefly, if you look at the history, Cyberjaya started as the what we would call as the original corridor that was developed back in 1996, when the then Prime Minister realized that we needed to shift the economy into one that is knowledge-based. But since then, I think back in 2006, one of the realizations of the government of Malaysia is that for the first 50 years since our independence in 1957, a big chunk of the development has been focused around the Kuala Lumpur area, and therefore they felt that they needed to spread the share of the economic development to the other parts of Malaysia. So the government then formed 5 other corridors, and the most developed, I think the earliest one that was done was Iskandar, Malaysia. So the others being the Northern Corridor, the Eastern Corridor, and then the other 2 corridors of Sabah and Sarawak. So very quickly, that's just the introduction. So each corridor also has its focus areas in terms of what would be the growth and the areas that we're doing. So it is, of course, a healthy competition. But I think as in general, a lot of these locations have got its own unique value propositions. So together with Cyberjaya, we work very closely with the developers, the authorities, and also the industries that are in Cyberjaya as well. For example, we are talking to Aerodyne. I think we had a meeting with them just last week to see how we can complement what they're doing and seeing how our location actually can help to become another launchpad, not just for Singapore, but also for the rest of ASEAN through our location. So if you look at what Iskandar Malaysia is doing and what our role as a government-linked companies, the definition of a government-linked company can also be interpreted as doing investments that the government cannot do because you don't want to go and interfere into the commercial side of the business of the industry players, but at the same time, you know that the investments that are required will take a longer horizon to achieve its actual commercial returns, which a private company may find difficult to do. So we take on that role to identify what are the infrastructure requirements, what are the kind of areas that we can play in, so that these are developed, so that the industry players are removed from that burden, and we can help the government also achieve its policy and its planning that is required. Another area that we play is we try to interpret in terms of what the government puts into plan in terms of their framework and their intention, and get the views of the industry players so that this actually takes place in a much more accelerated process. So for example, if I relate it back to the original corridor, which is the multimedia super corridor and the development of Cyberjaya, we feel that what has maybe taken 20, 25 years for Cyberjaya to develop and understand, we can take from those experiences and those lessons and accelerate the process. One clear example I can give you is when we were doing the development of the framework for the blockchain village at Medini initiative. Initially, one of the feedback from the government side was, maybe you guys can form a roundtable to come up with a platform to discuss the national blockchain policy or roundtable discussion. But when we were discussing with the industry players, rather than giving the feedback to the government that I think we can form a discussion around what are the policies that are required, the industry players told us that if we can play the role to tell the government what not to do, that was a different perspective that we threw it back to the government. Say, look, the industry players say, leave us alone, let us do our work. You know, if you come up with very, very rigid policies and direction, it will slow down our growth. It will help us, it will not help us, although your intentions are good. So we decided that why don't we create a platform where the industry players can actually voice out what they feel that the government should say. This one, allow the industry players to do. That's an example of the role that we play as a government link company.
Okay, Zulfiqar, thank you. So even though I have 5 more questions, we need to wrap up this session. So let me get the one word from each, actually like from Kamarul and Riduan-san. So this is to Kamarul. So can you just tell us, like, what would you like to do with a Japanese company in this great Malaysian ecosystem? Very short comment, please.
Well, I would like to progress or advance the level of collaboration for technology development. I think, in fact, today I'm already looking for a robotics partner to develop 5 immediate problem statement that we have primarily in Malaysia, and that can be extended globally as well. We have already initiated this conversation. I want to work with various Japanese robotics company to develop, immediate problem solutions for immediate problem in Malaysia.
聞きましたか？日本のロボティクスカンパニーの皆さん、今マレーシア必要としてます。Okay, one final word from Riduan-san. So, how Japanese company can leverage this ecosystem? How can Japanese company work with a Malaysian startup or Malaysian big corporate?
Sorry, again. I think first thing first, I just wish to highlight again, we are here in Tokyo, Shiroyama Trust Tower. We are very nearby to you. If you have any business idea, come to us. We will try to support and facilitate and try to, connect you with the right parties or the relevant parties in Malaysia to ensure that your business can grow in the country. In terms of development of startups, ecosystem, and so on, I think Malaysia offers a very strategic location in terms we do have like incubators and so on. And I also would like to highlight this one particular agency called Magic that act as an accelerator not just for local startups but also foreign startups. Please do come over to us and we can discuss further in details.
Thank you, Riduan, and thank you, everyone. Unfortunately, we need to wrap up. So let me just speak Japanese in just 1 minute to wrap up this session. 今お聞きいただいた通りで、マレーシアガバメントですね、すごいスタートアップ支援ももちろんやっておりますし、エコシステムですね、非常に力を入れております。日本企業が非常に進出しやすい環境というのが今整っているかなと思っております。私も3年間ですね、マレーシアで仕事をしているんですけれども、驚くのがですね、エアロダインの中に女性が働いている率がすごい高いんですね。ダイバーシティ、人種的なダイバーシティもそうですし、性別的なダイバーシティ、非常にですね、日本よりも柔軟な環境なんじゃないかなと思っていまして、人種がいろいろいるということは、マレーシアをハブにして、他のシンガポールだったり、インドネシアだったり、インドだったり、こういうところにも非常に進出がしやすいのでですね、ぜひマレーシアをですね、アジアのハブという考え方、今までシンガポールというのが多かったと思うんですけれども、ぜひマレーシアもアジアのハブになるんだなということをですね、ご理解いただいて、これからマレーシア経済というのをウォッチしていただければと思います。ちょっと時間が過ぎてしまいましたが、以上でこのセッションを終了させていただきたいと思います。ありがとうございました。